Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my November book haul video. In November, I bought or received 16 total books. I looked back because I wasn't sure if this was a record. It was not. I have previously in a single month bought or received 18 books. But this is still one of my bigger book hauls than normal. This is because my birthday happens in November, so I get books for my birthday often, and I also get gift cards often, so I buy books with them. I also got a new bookshelf, which is pretty nice. So I'm working my way towards having a 360 degrees around my room bookshelves. I'm about 50% of the way there. I'm not all the way there yet. But this month I got 16 total books, and 7 of them are fantasy books, 4 of them are science fiction books, 2 of them are biography or memoirs, which is a genre I don't usually talk about on here, but I got them anyway. And then I got 2 YA or middle grade books, and then I got 1 Star Wars book. So I'm going to go through and talk about my paperbacks first, and then I'll talk about my hardcovers at the end. So for paperbacks, the first book I got was the book Death Troopers by Joe Schreiber. This book I got when my friend went up to Washington State, and there was a cute, nice little bookstore there, and he was like, hey, if there are any books that you want me to pick out. And I saw this one, and I was like, you know what? I don't have a copy of Death Troopers yet. So I said, why don't you pick that out? And he did, and it's a really short book. It's only like 270 pages, so I'm sure it'll be a quick read. That I'll get to eventually, because my goal is to have every Legends book read, and I am like 75% of the way there now. Going through the Fate of the Jedi, whew, that made it a lot easier. I shortened my list quite a bit. So next, I'm going to talk about some of the science fiction paperbacks that I got. The first book I'll talk about is Mission to Metheny, which is a science fiction book by the author Les Johnson, who you might remember, if you're a longtime viewer, I interviewed him at DragonCon. That video, if you look up Les Johnson, Jonathan Cohn interview, it'll appear on your screen. And Les Johnson is a NASA scientist who also writes science fiction, so he knows his stuff when it comes to science fiction. And I am really enjoying the science fiction I've been reading from Baen, that publisher, and so I got this book. Actually, I had my parents get it this month. The next science fiction book I have is A Star-Wheeled Sky by Brad R. Torgerson, and this is a science fiction book that seems to be less hard sci-fi and more into the fantastical elements of sci-fi, but Brad Torgerson wrote a book that I absolutely loved that I read this year at the Chaplain's War, and I believe my review of that either is out or should be out soon, and that was a terrific book, favorite book of the year for me, and and I wanted to read more of Brad Torgerson, so I don't really know much about this book, but I know it's one of his other books that he's published, so I got that one. And apparently it was, as the cover says, it was a Dragon Award winner from the Dragon Awards at DragonCon, which is something that Baen really pushes to win, is the Dragon Awards. The next book is actually a duplicate book. It is a book that I technically already own, but I wanted to have in another size, and that is The Dabaray Snake Launcher by Joel Presby. This book, I read the book on the channel and reviewed it. I enjoyed it. It is a debut solo novel from Miss Presby, and I did interview her. She was part of the group I interviewed back at the beginning of the year for the What Price Victories interview, and then I also interviewed her separately talking about the Dabaray Snake Launcher at DragonCon. And I already had the big trade paperback, which came out, but I also wanted to get the mass market, which is rare for me. I rarely get duplicates of books, so that tells you how much the book means to me. So yeah, this book just came out in paperback this month. Now getting into some of the paperback fantasy books I got. This first book was not on my radar to buy, but I saw it for really cheap at the bookstore, and I was like, you know what, this is rarely at the bookstore, so I'm going to get it. So that is Dragonprins by Melanie Ron. This is a book that I know some older fantasy fans love, particularly ones like Brian Lee Durfee, talk about this being a seminal fantasy book for them. And so it's about 560 pages, so it's a decent book, but it has really loose binding. So because of that, it appears way longer than it actually is. When you compare it to the next book I'm going to talk about, they're close to the same length, but one looks huge and one looks small, but they're about the same length. That's because of how tight the binding is. This is from Daw Books, a publisher I don't read terribly much from, but I've read a little bit from them and enjoyed them. So that is the first fantasy book I got. I do love that cover, that Michael Whalen cover. The next book I got is The Sheep Farmer's Daughter from the Deed of Paxenarian by Elizabeth Moon. This book is really close in length, in page length, to Dragonprins, but you see how different they look, how the size, one looks huge, one looks small. It's because of the tightness of the binding and the thickness of the paper as well. But this book I've been really interested in since I saw the premise. Again, another Brian Lee Durfee purchase. This book series, not only is it Bane, a classic Bane from like the 80s when they were starting out. I actually had book 3 because I found it in a local bookstore, but I could never find books 1 and 2. So these ones I asked for my birthday, and luckily I got both of them. And the second one is called Divided Allegiance, with a much more risque cover, which I don't love. I much prefer the Sheep Farmer's Daughter cover. And this is The Deed of Paxenarian, that trilogy. And from what I read about Elizabeth Moon's history and her biography, she sounds like an interesting individual. So I am interested to read these 2 books and the third book, which I bought a couple months ago. Next, I have some fantasy novels by Barbara Hamley. I have her novel Dragon's Bane and the book Dragon's Shadow. I actually have been looking for Dragon's Bane for a long time. And I happened to see Dragon's Shadow at one bookstore, and I said, well, you know what, I'll get it, and eventually one day I'll go on ABE Books and find Dragon's Bane. And then like a week later, boom, I found Dragon's Bane at the other bookstore, because they just brought in a bunch of new books. And I was like, yes! And so I bought the book. These are really short fantasy books, as opposed to the other fantasy books that I bought, which are like 500-ish pages long. These ones are like not even 400 pages long. They're like 350 pages. This one's just barely 300. So they're not that long. The reason I bought these books is because, specifically the first book, is because Brandon Sanderson talks about how Dragon's Bane is the book that got him into reading. And he credits it as not only his love of reading, but his love of fantasy and his style a little bit. And so I thought, you know what? It's worth exploring at least. I only have the first 2 books. I believe there are 4 total in the series. But I will for sure read book 1. We'll see if I read both of them. So now I have some trade paperbacks, which are middle grade books. The first one is a middle grade book from an author that I have read a ton of books from, but I've never read a middle grade from him, and that is John Grisham. Now, this is categorized as a YA book in the bookstore. And I understand why they categorize this in my local used bookstore as a YA. Like, I understand. But for one thing, the book itself says ages 8 and up. The style and design of the book is meant to be a middle grade design. The YA books are a little bit bigger, not just in page count, but in terms of, or word count, but in terms of the size of the paperbacks. So this is, to me, a middle grade. That's where I'll categorize it. I'm going to give him his own middle grade section. But this is his novel, Theodore Boone, Kid Lawyer, the first in his Theodore Boone series. I'm trying to get him more into middle grade to find books that my kids at my school will like. And I thought, I'll give this a whirl and see if I enjoy it and see if maybe my kids will enjoy it. Maybe not, but you never know. So it should be this is a really quick read. So that should be a lot of fun. I also got a middle grade fantasy novel titled Redwall, which is a bit longer. This one, I could conceivably see this categorized as YA almost, but again, size and design, it's the same paperback size as the Theodore Boone. It's a little longer, but it's the same. Like, I would categorize this as middle grade myself. This is the first in a long-running Redwall series. I believe there's, like 20-plus books in the series now. I think the author died about a decade ago. but I was like, I'll give this a try. My librarian, when I was in lower elementary, like kindergarten, first and second grade, actually showed us regularly the Redwall TV show that came out, I believe it was in the 90s, and she showed it to us regularly in library. We weren't reading the books, but she showed us it in library. And I loved that series, but I'd never put it together that it was from this book series. And I've had friends and family who have read Redwall and really enjoyed it. So I was like, you know what? It's a bit different of a style than I'm usually reading, but I'll give it a go. So that is my 2 middle grade books. So now we're getting into the hardcovers that I bought or received. And these are all over the place genre-wise. So to go into it, the first book is actually one of 2 books that the publisher sent me. Sometimes publishers send me books to review if I can get to them. And the first one is The City of Marble and Blood. And I either have the review up or the review is going up soon. I did review the first book and interviewed the author a couple times, once over Skype and once at DragonCon, and he's a delight. His pitch for the series is amazing. This is one of the books in my collection on the book haul that I've already read. And actually, I read the book before this copy came in. I had gone to the bookstore and purchased a copy of the book because I was really excited to read it, and I didn't think the publisher was going to send me one. And then all of a sudden, boom, the book came in into the mail for me. So I thought, you know what? I'll keep it. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it yet, but this is a nice copy of the book that the publisher sent me. Next is a very different style. Actually, I'm going to save that. The next book I got was The Wayfair Redemption by Sarah Douglas. This is part of her big fantasy series. This is one of those series that released in the late 90s, early 2000s that I really love that era of publishing, particularly from Tor Publishing. I think they were firing on all cylinders around that time. You had Wheel of Time, you had the Rune Lords, you had the Saga of Recluse, you had the Terry Goodkind series, the Sword of Truth series. You had a lot of classic fantasy being released in the late 90s and early 2000s. And so I've been thinking about buying this book for so long, and finally I had a gift card and I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to buy it. Yes. So I did. And so that is The Wayfair Redemption. Next, I have another book that was sent to me by the publisher, Monster Hunter Memoirs Fever by Larry Correia and Jason Cordova. I actually interviewed Jason over at DragonCon. You can find that interview by searching up my name and Jason Cordova interview, and you'll find the interview. And it was a lot of fun. And I have the first book in the Monster Hunter universe, which I plan to read in the next couple months. And then I will get to the other Monster Hunter books in this one as well. So this one is one I unfortunately can't get to immediately. Sorry, but I will get to this eventually. It has a very nice hardcover. Next, I got an older book. This is the autobiography of Ronald Reagan, titled An American Life. And it is a thick book. In hardcover. It's not including the index at the end. It's over 700 pages. So it's a thick book. And I like reading these presidential autobiographies. I don't talk about them on the channel much, but I do read them sometimes. And so this is one of those books that I'm sure I will enjoy reading. Biggest book on the list. That was one that was actually given to me by my sister. The final book that I got for the month of November was Star Trek Movie Memories by William Shatner with Chris Kresge. I particularly got this because this is like more distilled. Sometimes you get autobiographies and they really focus on the person's early life, or they really focus on later in life, or they focus on things that you don't necessarily want to read about. Well, this is really focused on the Star Trek storytelling for William Shatner, specifically focusing on the movie era, which is my favorite era for Shatner. I'm not a big original series fan, but I'm a big fan of the original movies, particularly 2, 3, 4, and 6. And 1 is okay. But anyway, I got this book for not too much. And so I thought, you know what, this might be a fun, thing to flip through and read. I don't collect many memoirs. You know, this is the first time in like a year that I've actually bought memoirs, but I figured I'd give it a shot. So those are all of the books that I purchased in the or received in the month of November. So a lot of books, 16 books, not quite my biggest book haul yet, but pretty close. I think this is second place. I'm pretty sure this is second place for in terms of a single month. I used to do my book hauls over the course of like 2 or 3 months because I wasn't buying as much then, but now that I'm buying books more often, I have to do them every month. And also the videos perform well. And I love doing them because I love talking about book hauls, and so this is one of my bigger ones. So if you've read any of these books, let me know your thoughts in the comments section. If you are interested in any of those books, let me know. And are there any that you're like, this is great, or maybe don't read that? Let me know all those thoughts in the comments section down below. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.